Slow down, lay your burden down.
Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Divergent Paths with Dan Dunford. I am Dan Dunford, and this is my show. And thank you to those of you who have been listening. Appreciate it. This is great. People have been really generous with recommendations and listening and feedback. So, thank you to those of you who have done so. Came from the Washington Square Winds concert at Spectrum today. We talked about it a bunch last week. It was really great. Hopefully I'll have some live audio from the show coming up here in the next few weeks or so. A couple of big announcements, podcast related. First, Divergent Paths is now on Stitcher. If you are unaware of what that is, it's just the biggest podcast app for Android phones. It's completely separate from the iTunes store, so you have to submit it separately, but that approval just came through this week, so hooray, now people with Stitcher, or with Android phones rather, don't have to deal with any kind of weird scanning app that pulls stuff from the iTunes store. You can just use Stitcher. Second, then this is even bigger news. The Divergent Paths with Dan Dunford is growing a member. Sounds weird. Previous podcast guest, Trevor New, wonderful violist, etc. He is coming on board to be a producer and work with a lot of some of the editing and sound stuff that I don't have as much experience with, as well as a partner and someone to bring new ideas and someone for me to bounce ideas off of. He's a really great guy. I'm really happy to have him on board with this, and also to help make the product better. So, really excited about that. He was gracious enough to do a little bit of work with some of the earlier episodes, but now he's on board, and we're gonna make some more great podcasts. So, happy about that. Okay, so this week's episode, it's another double format, if you will. The hour-long interview segment is with the extremely talented percussionist Chihiro Shibayama. Had a really, really nice talk with her. Went through a lot of stuff. One thing, we devoted a lot of the podcast really to talking about about the cultural differences of growing up as a musician in Japan, and how that, what that meant when she came to the States, which I'd never really sat down and talked with someone about before, and I really enjoyed that. I hope you will as well. The second part of this interview has to do with a nonprofit organization that Chihiro started in collaboration with her composer friend Yui Kitamura back 8 years ago now. That organization is called MuSE, which stands for Multicultural Sound Evolution, not to be confused with Group MuSE, which is something totally different. It's a really cool organization. Please check them out at musefriends.org, MUSE friends.org. And what we talk about the different things that this group does, and the things that they put on. But the big part of this is that every year, this is the 5th year that they've done it, MuSE puts on a festival in Queens the week before Thanksgiving, and that's coming up here. So I thought, well, why not, help her try and, steer some people that direction. So the Sounds of Arts Festival 2015 will be taking place in Queens. And I talk about it with Chihiro, and then afterwards, Yui Kitamura, who does a lot of the day-to-day operation and direction, comes from her, and she was able to give some more specifics about this year's festival. I was able to talk about some of the basics and the larger things with Chihiro, and it was great. For MuSE related things, check out musefriends.org and check out the Sounds of Arts Festival 2015. So coming up, first long interview with Chihiro, then short interview with Yui, and then no music this week. Just nothing to put up, but next week there will be more music with my guest, Marie Incontrera of the Eco Music Big Band. So look forward to that and enjoy this week's interview. As always, like, subscribe, share, review, etc., podcasty. And I'll talk to you all next week. Bye.
Slow down.
MuSE Festival.
Are you drinking beer?
No.
Oh.
It's
a brown bottle. I just assumed.
Look, it's a perfectly
alcohol-free ginger ale. Wow. So how's your week going?
Good.
Yeah.
I just realized how busy I am this weekend and got a little sad, but also happy.
I mean, when you're doing stuff like every single day or every night, it's just those one night a week when you don't have anything becomes so much nicer, so much more precious, and you're like, I can go home and do nothing.
Right.
And by nothing I mean like practice.
Oh, I don't practice.
Oh no! How dare you?
No.
Well, that actually is something I've always been curious about. Any musician can tell you that it's expensive to be a musician. It's just you have to do instrument maintenance. You have to pay for whatever union membership or music or just transport if you're going somewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but that's the case for any musician. But for someone who's a percussionist, there's just so much more you have to have. Like, what things do you own? What instruments do you personally own?
Well, so I'm not sure if I'm a good representation of a percussionist, but I would say because I'm lucky enough to be in New York City, I kind of have been getting away with not owning much. And I mean, I sound like I'm saying it's a bad thing, but it's more of an economical thing that I found. That I found most work I do, presenters or organizers, they know that percussionists in New York City might not have a car, and they might not have a giant apartment with timpani and marimbas and vibes and drum sets and all these things available to them. So they usually rent for us. So occasionally they'll ask, hey, do you have this and that? And if it fits in my bag, or if I can roll it onto a subway, then I'll bring it. But usually I end up saying, I'm sorry, I don't have a car and I don't own timpani. Could you please rent? And then if they say yes, You'll do that. And if not, then I recommend someone who would do that.
One of my favorite rackets, if you will, is the way that Joe Tompkins kind of runs things.
Oh, yes.
Because he's, he plays with, He plays on Broadway. He plays with the Met. He plays with with all of the orchestras. Subs in, does all this stuff. When people come in and people on tour come in and hire him. But my favorite part about that is that in addition to being that, he also has his own warehouse with everything that anyone would need. So these people rent his things and then hire him to play his own things.
Yep.
I think it's the funniest. I wish there was some analogous thing that I could do.
Yeah, it's a cartage, right?
Yeah, I mean,
it's an investment, but then I think a lot of my percussion friends, well, Joe and actually Jeff Irving, who's the other owner of New York Percussion Service, they're both very, very active freelancers. So, but I think when they can provide instruments, it's more way to make income. They're gonna be there anyway.
Yeah.
So why not provide instruments and also get compensated for it? And you're not letting anybody else play, so
right.
It's kind of
you're not worried about the things getting damaged.
Right.
Their warehouse is right around the corner from my apartment.
Oh,
and
up in Bronx.
South Bronx. Like I can walk there in like 3 or 4 minutes. That's right by my apartment.
Amazing.
And they've hired me a couple times because my first job at MuSE was as a percussion mover.
Really?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, so you know about that.
So like they've one of the guys who has been one of their drivers, Phil Gallo. He recommended me, and I've been one of their movers a couple times for different things, which is just fun. Except for the fact that it's like 11:30 at night and freezing, and you're moving a 5-octave marimba, and you're like, I don't like this anymore. I don't like this anymore. But it pays well at night.
Good.
Anyway, so yeah, I guess you could say I'm a little more familiar with, at least because I'd moved out everything, but I also was friends with percussionists at MuSE at the time. So I was always around for the percussion ensemble concerts that Jim Baker would run, and I would just I'm very familiar with all the instruments.
Right.
Or as familiar, more familiar than another instrumentalist.
Yeah, you know how painful that is to move all those.
Yeah. It really is.
Oh, I know.
And some of them are just like, you see in the back, you see like a rack of crotales, and you're like, oh, that's probably pretty light. No, very heavy. Or even just a Glock, like that's one that's like actually on wheels. Yeah. And you're like, oh, this should be no problem to lift up in the truck. Nope, it's definitely 2 people. But on the flip side, I could do a bass drum by myself. I don't know. It's weird how that works. Anyway.
Density and size.
Yeah, density and exactly. Yeah. And all those heavy metal things.
Why did I pick percussion? Right?
Why did you pick percussion? So let's get into that. Where are you from? Why are you in New York?
Okay. I'm from Japan. I was born and raised in Yokohama City, Japan, which is like 1 hour south of Tokyo. And I think you might have seen tires made by Yokohama Tires, or it's a big port city. Has the cleanest Chinatown, I think.
Well, I mean, compared to New York, it wouldn't take much.
Well,
Chinatown here is pretty smelly. I don't like fish smell, so I don't like Chinatown. But.
Yeah, so then that's where I grew up. And my mom, I would say, is the biggest influence of me being a musician, because she took me everywhere to different concerts. And I would say I grew up as a classical music nerd. I didn't really listen to pop music other than TV. And I didn't own a single CD.
Really?
Like pop music CDs. Right. And I didn't really like going to karaoke, which is kind of surprising to many friends of mine, because I'm from Japan. It's from Japan. I didn't know any songs.
I don't know how those stereotypes work. I don't know where they come from. I'm just like,
it's a Japanese thing.
It's okay.
Yeah. Right. And,
So what's the? Excuse me. What? I'm not particularly familiar with the arts. How the arts work in cities in Japan. What was that? What was that situation like when you were growing up?
Well, it's Japan, where I grew up, it's a big city. It's a modern city. So I would say it's similar to, big, cities in America where if you seek, there are good exposures. I remember music was always a part of education, though, like kindergarten or, grade schools. All those years, I was playing something or singing something. I was in a play, or I was very into a recorder, I remember. But like I said, my mom would always be more interested in throwing me things. Like I was doing ballet for the longest time. She even got a harpsichord randomly, so that became my first instrument to get lessons on.
It was a harp.
Harpsichord.
Oh, harpsichord.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right. Even before I even played piano, which surprises a lot of my friends.
Well, that's pretty unusual.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
yeah. I know.
to play harpsichord, not even own one. I mean, right. I think there's one guy who currently goes to MuSE studying harpsichord out of 450 students.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't really, and I didn't know that it was unusual then. I remember playing chopsticks though on it with my teacher. 4 hands chopsticks, and everybody else was an adult student when I performed that in student recitals. And eventually the teacher said, you should probably learn piano too. So here is a teacher who can teach you both. And upright piano showed up in my apartment, my house, way after we had a harpsichord. And then
How old were you when?
I would say 7, 8, something like that. And then I discovered marimba around 13, 14. And then that was the first instrument I asked for lessons. Before that, it was kind of all thrown at me, and I liked it, so I kept going.
Right.
But marimba was something that I seeked. I was like, that looks cool.
Now, was there a reason outside of it looking cool? I mean, had you?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I did go see. Okay. So yeah, it's one of those mom's musical adventure. And she'll take me to this local marching band concerts, where I end up going actually later on. They have this very famous pit section, front ensemble section, and this marching band is very historically famous in that city, and they do well in competitions. And for some reason, they had very great marimba players. And I will go to their concerts, and it's a stage show usually. It's like a show. They do, marches, but they also do arrangements of different, and they might do like a Japanese pop songs arrangements, or they might do like little Gershwin arrangements or something in between classical to jazz to pop and brass band, all mashed up together. And that, looking at them, they looked very cool, and they sounded great. And so I was like, I want to be in there. Yeah.
Were your parents musicians, or were they just really invested in music, and taking you?
Well, they're not musicians.
Okay.
Like I said, my mom just loves classical music, and my dad is an architect. So he is, I guess, in the arts, but he was never the one to find me these things. He would support me. He was the only driver in the household. So without him, I could never get to lessons.
Right.
And of course, he provided financially to pay for lessons. And so without two of them together, my mom was a superior researcher, and then my dad is a provider and a driver. I wouldn't exist now, but yeah.
And you were the little one tagging along to these concerts. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of kids when they who end up as percussionists, they start, they don't. It's more of I want to play the drums, and then they're like, okay, you can play the drums. We'll move you. Move you towards more percussion. Once we
right.
at least American little kids.
So
Like what?
Yeah.
I mean, what is the process like as, starting, wanting to start on a keyboard percussion instrument as opposed to, and moving in that direction? I mean, starting on marimba at 14, like that doesn't get, that's pretty late if you're preparing for college, within 4 years.
I think so. Well, so this coming to America thing, which I'm still here, so has been kind of my life, a big part of my life now.
Right.
To be in America, well, New York, because I think New York is not really like the rest of America. New York City as a country is kind of like my perception. But anyway, so again, my mom found this wonderful summer camp, which we had no idea about, Interlochen summer camp in northern Michigan. And I don't know if you would believe me, but I didn't speak English at all. And so I've come a long way.
Well, I mean...
and so I couldn't really...
Did you study English in school?
Yes, but I never spoke, or I never heard actual Americans speak English.
Right, I mean...
Until I landed in America, so...
It's funny, during audition season at the new school, I often, or for the past several years, I've done the interviews for the ESL students, English second language students. And part of the process is you have to write down how many years you've studied English. And then I'll do like a live interview and, kind of grade them on what, how well I'm conversing with them. And I found it surprising that I would consistently be getting people who would be writing down that they studied English for 7, 8, 9, 12, 12 years or whatever it was. And they, it would be very difficult to carry on a consistent conversation. Some of that, of course, is attributed to nervousness. I mean, because that does have a big effect on whether you can actually attend. But I always, I never thought about the idea of like, well, yeah, it's sure you can study English for 12 years and ace your written exam and then never have spoken it to anyone else. Anyway, so Interlochen, you didn't speak any English really.
English, and then my mom said, "Hey, Chihiro, do you want to try going to this thing this summer, or might have been like a winter before that to prepare, And I was 15 and kind of clueless and fearless, and I would say just interested in anything that was thrown at me. Curious, that's the word. So I said, yeah, sure. And so we hired someone who arranges that kind of study abroad, and then prepped audition tape, applications, and all that stuff. So that was the first time I had to play timpani and snare drum, because most American schools, as a percussionist, you have to learn timpani, snare drum, and keyboard instruments, so marimba, to get into a school program as a percussionist.
I mean, because they'll be rotating you around on everything.
Right, and it's just a different system, because in Japan, actually, you could go into a college measuring in marimba and not have to do other instruments. Or you could be a percussion major where you focus on percussion, like, snare drum or timpani and orchestral playing. Or So in Japan, that's why there are tons of marimba players who have gone to school with marimba degrees. And in America, that's slowly becoming a thing. If you want to do that, and then you go to certain schools with big marimba teachers, so you could focus on it. But then, for me, I think that was a very great opportunity to become a percussionist, because I rarely just play marimba these days.
It doesn't seem like there's exceptions to every rule, but focusing specifically on marimba seems like it would really narrow your job opportunities.
I mean, there are
especially
wonderful
in the States.
Marimba players out there who would do competitions, and then if you are successful in that way, then you become professors somewhere. But then you cannot earn living as a soloist like maybe concert pianist or violinist can, just because they're It's just there's not enough demand, I guess. So then they almost always have to teach
Right.
to actually make a living. But there are people out there who do that successfully.
I'm not particularly a big fan of marimba.
That's okay.
Whenever I hear a marimba soloist, even like a really great one,
Yeah.
I always think of the movie Aladdin.
What?
Yeah, because there's a part where one of the hyenas is like playing a rib cage with bones like a marimba, and every time I hear marimba solo music, that's the first thing I think of.
You mean Lion King?
That's what I meant. I meant Lion King.
Oh, okay.
So in Lion King, there's this thing.
Like, wait,
Anyway,
I don't remember
not
hyena.
Aladdin. Lion King. Yeah, there was no hyenas in
Right.
Aladdin at all.
There
I
was
saw
a
a really
monkey.
weird version. Yeah, Lion King. Anyway, wow, I'm not much of a Disney person, but
That's okay.
anyway, vibraphone has always been my favorite of the keyboard
lives
ones.
are really nice.
Anyway, so you went to Interlaken.
Yeah,
you learned,
and that was the first time I'm playing in orchestra. Just first time being around just foreigners, surrounded by, non-Japanese people, and taking lessons or just doing anything took me a while to get used to, like food I had to eat, and I was put into a cabin of 14 different girls, and on bunk beds, and you're woken up by a trumpet at 6 a.m. and you do a lineup, but then every day is just filled with music and friends your age who are excited about being there, playing music and learning, and I just really liked it. So then the teacher there, Keith Aleo, who actually just became teacher at the academy. So I'm very happy about that. But he encouraged me to take the audition at the end of the summer camp. And I said, oh, okay. He helped me prep the program, and I did it, and I got in with a scholarship. And that's when I went into the phone booth and typed in like a 20-digit phone card number because there's no Skype back then.
Of course.
To call my mom. It's like, hey, Mom.
Not coming home.
Well, no. No, I had to go home once.
Right.
But then I was like, hey, I think I like it here. And I got into this high school program. So I might want to go here. And then, of course, I had to go back because I had plane tickets, and I couldn't just
stay.
Quit high school.
Little bit illegal.
Oh, right.
Too.
Right. Yes, exactly. So then I went back, and I had to decide to quit Japanese high school and move or not in like 2 weeks. But then I did, and that was kind of the best decision I've made for young me, I want to just say good job, young me.
Good job, 15-year-old Chihiro. You made the right decision.
I think so. Because at the time, I mentioned earlier, I actually studied very hard to switch high school. This was a private junior high and high school combined to get into this marching band that I wanted to be in so bad. And I ended up saying goodbye to that school even before graduating to go to Interlaken. But then, so I feel like this little, coincidental steps that I've taken just because I want to play marimba, I want to be in this thing. I ended up being in that school. And then, who knows, maybe because I was in that school, I was able to find a summer camp. And then I took the path to come to Michigan and study very hard for 2 years in like a, very enclosed environment.
It's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah, and, without guardian or someone signs you out, you can't really go out or anything.
Yeah.
So all I did was make friends, study English, practice. Kind of the best way to spend 2 years of high school if you want to get into a good college, I would say. So I think I really think those are the 2 years I practiced the most. And
what else are you going to do?
Well, yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who just, kind of bullshit and hang out and stuff and don't get,
I mean, I
take
saw
advantage.
people who seem to be very distracted even in that environment too. Like,
But
it's tough to be away from home.
Yeah, I mean, and I would imagine now, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like you gave up a lot.
Yeah.
At home to come and play in come to a place that you was unfamiliar, completely different than how you'd grown up, and I would imagine that not taking full advantage of that would have felt like you were failing, even if you weren't failing by other people's standards. Not taking full advantage of the opportunity that you would have.
Yeah.
Like what else? You're specifically there
right.
to do this, and
Yeah.
you gave up this other thing to come here. So why would you mess around?
Yeah, I think I also had no idea how to mess around. I didn't, because that was all I was given. Class schedules and then things to practice, and I don't know. I mean, I was very young and innocent, and and I think. One of the hardest things for me back then was in Japan was fear of not being able to go to a good school as a musician because I felt so behind. I'm not sure if you know how the getting into college system is very different in each country, and
very little about Japan.
Yeah, I think in Asia, at least I could tell, Japan, you have to know a lot of things before you get into freshman college, even as a musician. For example, I remember requirement to get into one of the best schools is, you have to score great results on music theory, ear training like solfege, music history, secondary piano, the standardized tests like SAT, and then your instrument. And I was just so behind. I was, not even caught up on instruments.
Right.
Like, how am I going to get better at solfege and have, almost perfect pitch? Because that's what other people seem to have to get into these schools. So then I think I look back now, and coming to Interlochen was kind of my attempt to try different ways. Or maybe I was hoping for something great by sort of escaping. And it worked out okay.
Yeah, I mean,
it did.
If you can sidestep that. I mean,
yes.
I mean, and plus, like in America, with certain schools, if you have the money, you can go wherever you want.
I'm sure it's true everywhere.
And most conservatories, like as long as you're good enough on your instrument, they'll throw you in remedial classes to get the rest of it up to par.
Right.
Even if you don't have any. I didn't have any real training, but except for on my instrument. So it's
right.
So, did you, when you graduated from Interlochen, did you come straight to New York from there?
Yes.
Juilliard?
Yes, I did all 6 years straight through. It was very busy. It felt so fast, but great.
So, you're the first person I've had on. I've released 10 episodes. I've recorded another 5 or 6, I think, or will be shortly. And you're the first person I've had that's Juilliard, any kind of Juilliard training.
Okay.
And as someone who didn't even try, I like sniping at Juilliard and, and poking and like being like, Juilliard's not that great. That's just what I do because I'm snarky. So, but that being said, obviously incredible people come out of there. Like and have for decades. There's no getting around that. But for people on the outside, there can be sort of a
Like a
they're looking down on us from their glass building up at Lincoln Center. Did you? And I've also heard rumblings that it's very difficult to get out of the building to do different things because it's a lot more. This is just things I hear, but it's difficult to get outside the building and like actually work a little, work as a musician because you have to do exactly what they say. Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm just curious about what your experience was.
Well, like again, you were talking to a percussionist, and it's, I think, very different, I imagine, than very traditional instruments like violins or strings, piano. I feel like they have more maybe soloistic mind, or maybe it's changing now, but I think as a percussionist, yes, it's very orchestral, and we do train in orchestra playing, and we are required to play in orchestra, and they take that very seriously. But then because we have teachers from the Met who does solo recitals of marimba, or we have New York Phil player who is a son of Jacob Druckmann. Dan Druckmann is an amazing new music percussionist. He is the director of percussion ensemble there, and he takes percussion ensemble very seriously. That's a very difficult music to learn, and that was actually my favorite class. I learned a lot about chamber music, and I think that was my strength anyways, to play chamber music. Or to play with people, that was my favorite thing. So I did solo recitals whenever I could.
More than you were required to do?
Yeah, you only have to do when you graduate and in each program, but I did every year starting I did every year actually. First year I had to share because they didn't give me one slot.
Right.
So yeah, putting together concerts and learning all the pieces, running around, and I managed to fit in gigs here and there. So my experience at Juilliard actually was filled with random musical experience, and a very good one too, because they give you great opportunities.
Well, of course.
Right, and that's why people go there, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to realize when you're in there though. When I got out in 2009 for my master's, I suddenly didn't play in Carnegie Hall for a while. And I was like, wait,
am I doing something wrong?
Do I ever get to play there ever again, after that? And
yeah.
I was kind of having a nervous breakdown. It's like, oh no, they were so protective of us.
So at what point did you realize that playing in Carnegie Hall isn't as impressive, when you realize that whoever wants to rent it out and has the money can rent it out?
Well, I actually knew that in the middle of the school,
Yeah.
But then...
But there's something about...
Right.
There's something about playing on that stage where it's like, oh, I'm doing it right.
Yeah. And then, there's always a difference when you're getting paid to play there versus you're paying to play there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I know you could rent it just to do a little silly dance if you want to, but I'm not going to do that.
Well, what is that percussion ensemble piece that's where one of the percussionists has to dance in wooden clogs?
Really? That sounds fun.
I know. I've seen it performed twice, and I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, it's all wooden. All the instruments are wooden, and there's one of the parts of it is like one of the performers takes off their shirt and dances in wooden clogs on a piece of wood. It's something else. Anyway, that's what I thought of when you said doing a silly little dance in Carnegie Hall.
Oh, so awesome. You could do that.
Yeah, exactly. You could do that and get paid.
Yeah. See, that's why I love percussion.
Excuse me.
I say people, and when I especially meet non-musicians who don't know me, they say, so what do you do? And I say, oh, I hit things for a living, and I teach people how to hit things.
Oh, you do kickboxing. Okay.
And they were like, what? And then I start to tell them what I do. And they're still confused, but it's okay.
So, what is, as, you've been out of school for 6 years now, you just said, what is the life of a freelance percussionist? I mean, you do a lot of different stuff now, but I'm assuming it wasn't necessarily like that immediately. I'm sure there was some well, you just said, I didn't play in Carnegie Hall for several years, that so what is it like for a freelance percussionist trying to, squeeze by? I mean, I would imagine you have to do everything.
Right. I guess we haven't talked about my multiple life.
Not yet.
But
we're that's where I'm shooting for right now.
I guess if I'm gonna go there. So, like everybody else, I think, when you graduate school, your immediate thought is, what am I gonna do to pay rent and bills? And I, was scared coming out, and having this Japanese citizenship, staying on artist visa. Back then I had a student visa. I went through artist visa, and then now I have a green card, and that makes it easier to work.
Yeah.
But back then, I only had to work. I only was allowed to work within music.
Right.
Unless it's some sort of like cash arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was particularly difficult. But because I studied as a music librarian at Juilliard, and that was something I just stumbled upon, because our music library used to be on the 3rd floor, same floor as percussion practice rooms. And, it was a really convenient way to make little money. And I met a really great mentor there. Russ Gersberger was my first librarian mentor, I would say. And then I kept working there through my later part of undergrad and then master's degree. And then I was interested in just getting a job music administratively, and I applied for New York Youth Symphony, but as an orchestra manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get that job. But then 2 months later, they called me and they offered me a librarian job because they, I guess, lost one or something. And then, so that was my first librarian job. And I kept doing that for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I do part-time Orchestra St. Luke's librarian, and I also do little help here and there for librarians in the city, like Paul Beck, who's the Juilliard Orchestra or Juilliard School librarian. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of one side of me.
And that's what kept you being able to stay in the States?
No.
Until you were able to finish? Or?
Not at all, actually. I kept playing, too.
Oh, okay.
Now I'm just trying to think of what I did besides gigging, because that's obvious for me. I kept taking work, playing in orchestras or...
It might seem obvious.
I guess, yeah.
But I talk to people all the time
mm-hmm.
who... where, and this is kind of... a lot of people have this. Percussion is a little different because when you're in school, at least in America, most percussionists, you can't just
mm-hmm.
you can't just do one thing. You can't just play snare drum.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you can't just play snare drum. Like you could specialize in timpani,
mm-hmm.
but you're generally going to have to do everything else. Like
right.
One concert you'll be playing
mm-hmm.
timpani, the next concert you'll be playing
playing
the keyboards and auxiliary percussion
mm-hmm.
or whatever.
Right.
But most instrumentalists,
mm-hmm.
not so much. You obviously you're doing your one thing,
right.
and you come out of school and you're like, well, I
mm-hmm.
can only do this one thing,
mm-hmm.
and it takes a while to realize, I have to be able to. I can't just the chances of me getting into full-time, getting a full-time position in an orchestra,
Right.
really slim.
Yeah.
Not because they're not necessarily good enough, but because
Right.
there's just such a influx of people who are also very, very good. So I wouldn't say that it's quite as obvious as in New York a little more.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's as obvious as you might think. You know.
Well, as a percussionist, you do have to play multiple instruments. Like one of the things I think it's really funny, I think it's cool as a percussionist that I've, gotten to play water and paper and stones. It's a tandem piece. I don't know if you've heard how some of his...
One of the percussionists at MuSE did the water concerto.
Oh, yeah. So
my first year
right.
at MuSE, like 7 years ago. And I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. So, who knew I would get paid playing water? But that was one of the coolest jobs I've had, to play on stage as an opera called T. I got to go to Vancouver, Santa Fe, and Philly to do the production. And the Santa Fe one, that was in 2007, so I did that within school, actually. And stuff like Broadway subbing, I do a little bit of that. That I play around 27, 29 instruments. You're surrounded by it.
Right.
So it's kind of like new music-y setup that you might have seen. Just a lot of instruments and not many rests.
Yeah.
And then there's very rigid opera or even concert orchestra work that I do where, you might sit for 45 minutes and play one crash cymbals.
Do you have something that you are particularly fond of, or do you like being able to, doing something different every night of the week?
Like a genre of music or
just, a specific, like a genre or, one kind of setup that you prefer over another?
I'm really bad at picking, like, even picking what to eat at a restaurant. So I think it's just I like doing different things at times. Like one thing I really love about Broadway or Broadway type show business stuff is that there are so many people come see you. And they're not here to see me, but then, I didn't have to hustle trying to get people to come. And they're enjoying it so much. And to be a part of something big, like when I did Radio City Christmas Spectacular, that was one of the
thousands and thousands, millions of people every Christmas.
Right. I'll be playing on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Yeah, there's like 6 shows a day sometimes.
Well, I mean, fortunately, they do compensate their musicians pretty well for doing that.
Right. And I see the house being packed, and I think it seats like 5,000 people or something. I'm like, wow, people do want to see me or these performers doing their thing. And that's a great feeling. So that's why I like show business style too.
Well, I mean, there's something... say you're, if you're doing a concert, like say a percussion ensemble concert, even if it's like a good venue and great musicians, it's still going to be tough to get people to come. Right. A lot of people to come. Yeah. You'll have your new music enthusiasts, you'll have your percussion ensemble enthusiasts, and if it's a well-known group, like people will come. Yeah. But there's something different about the kind of crowd interaction that happens at a show like that, as opposed to something that like you don't have to sell to anyone. They'll come no matter what, and that kind of performance is really. There's a rush that comes from it. Comes from like the huge crowds or even just loud crowds. Yeah. I don't know. I like doing things that have loud crowd, interactive crowds as opposed to the ones that are just sitting there being quiet. Right. But that's just me.
Yeah. But again, like the show stuff, it could be repetitive,
Of course.
But then, once you learn it, You don't have to relearn. That's kind of the idea
Yeah.
that I like. Then I love playing new music because I'm creating it. And, you know, how great is it to work with someone who's alive, who composed the music? And I can actually ask questions like, what kind of sound did you actually want on this bass drum? Did you mean this? Did you mean that? And I get to experiment. And, you know, who knows if people would listen to it in 100 years from now. But at least I could be a part of that. And, yeah, the pay might not be so great compared to some other stuff, but then...
You're still getting paid.
Right. Or even if I don't get paid, if I really like it, then I would love to do that kind of stuff.
So what say the month of October. What all are you doing this month? Like, where all are you playing?
Let's see. Could I remember this in the top of my head? Well, so one very exciting new thing I started this fall was to sub at the Met Opera. So that's a very serious classical thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm doing something little or short, like a sound effect, like wind machines or offstage drum roll or stuff like that. But it's so cool to be a part of such beautiful big production. That's I guess kind of one of the one new things. And I teach every Saturday morning. I happen to have marimba students just down the street from me. So that's one. I coach orchestras at Interschool Orchestra New York. It's a youth orchestra program.
I've been
really?
a ringer for them before.
Okay, so you know. Let's see, what else? This is sort of cutting into November, but then I will play with Wet Ink Ensemble, and we'll play outside at Times Square. We're playing Schoenberg. So that's pretty exciting to play Schoenberg at Times Square.
In Times Square.
Yeah, and it's outside.
Yeah.
So we'll start to rehearse that soon. What else? I'm going up to Westchester to play timpani in the chamber orchestra. Did I do anything else? Oh, I'm subbing with the Juilliard Orchestra. So I get to play with, you know, students, and I think... Oh, and I get to work with Pablo Casado, who is the music director of Orchestra St. Luke's, where I work as a librarian. So there's this kind of funny juxtaposition of my life. It's like, oh, I work for you as a different person here, but then I'm actually playing for you here. And so it's confusing, but fun.
It's the biggest challenge is making sure you don't double book yourself.
Oh, yes. There's that.
So I'm just, when you're, what are some of the challenges when you are bouncing from place to place like that, and, you know, back and forth between teaching and performing with this group, and then maybe something that's a little, you know, going between something that's serious and classical and maybe something that's a little lighter. Like, how do you deal with that as a musically? You just do it.
Yeah. Well, I think because I'm a percussionist and all those things that I mentioned, I might be playing different instrument, right? So I don't really have to compare. And it's a normal thing for percussionists. It's like, oh, for this, I have to play this little bit of ratchet and a bass drum and triangle. But for this, I'm playing timpani. Dvorak. There we go. Or this one's like wind machine. I'm just going to spin the wind machine when I'm supposed to. But then a lot of it comes from listening to the music. If there is recording of it, if it's an old music, classical music, I look at the score or part and try to familiarize myself. And that's enough to prep for that. The other big thing is, I think, knowing where to go. Like figuring out how to get to Westchester, or, you know, time management is another. when to eat or
Yeah.
when to do laundry. That's harder for me.
Well, that's if
Yeah.
you're working in Westchester or in any of the towns north of the city,
Uh-huh.
it's nice because you can combine the eating and the traveling
Yes.
and
Right.
and the beer drinking and all of that. You
Uh-huh.
can do that.
Important.
That's all
Yes,
three
yes.
very important things to
Yes.
musicians. Yeah, I guess I never really thought about that because percussionists have to switch back and forth between things just in maybe even in one concert.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it wouldn't not quite as much of a struggle going
Yeah.
from gig to gig because it's your life anyway.
Right. And what malice to bring?
All of them, obviously.
Well, yeah, but
Which 20 pairs do I want to bring?
no, it's not the same 20 pairs. Because, I mean,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, right.
which if you've got 80 pairs, you got to pick which 20 you want to
Right.
bring with you. I mean,
Yes.
obviously.
yeah, it's just like, when you're supposed to play triangle, you forget the beater and you're kind of dead. Like, the sound is dead.
You mean the wooden handle of a
Drumstick?
of a
No, it
sounds
doesn't
great.
work. No.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and those are very important. I know
Mhm.
it's really minor, but
No, it
Yeah.
seems minor, but a music director probably won't think it's so minor.
right.
Or
Yeah.
the leader of the section probably won't
Yeah.
think it's so minor
Yeah.
if you're not
So,
prepared.
it's important to look at your music beforehand. Obviously.
Yeah. So in addition to all your teaching and your performing, you
Mm.
also have you co-founded a nonprofit
Mhm.
called MuSE,
Yes, it's
Which-
in short for Multicultural Sonic Evolution.
multi
Mul-
multicultural sonic evolution.
Correct.
And it is about what day is today? Okay, today's the end of October. So next month will be there's I want to say a week and a half long festival
Yes.
through MuSE.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. So what was the impetus behind starting this thing? What does it involve, and what was the impetus behind starting it?
Yeah, so MuSE I co-founded with my friends at Juilliard when I was in master's program. And it started as something like, hey, I don't know what I'm going to do after school, but I want to keep playing music and maybe programming concerts together. And I happened to be talking to Yui Kitamura, who is my co-founder. And she wanted to do the same thing. So then we decided to make that as a nonprofit. But long story short, we got a pro bono service. And without even knowing how hard it is to become a nonprofit, we became one after 2 years. And then we started this festival called Sounds of Arts Festival. The idea behind it is that we wanted to be multidiscipline kind of group.
And what do you mean by that?
It means we wanted to produce concerts that are not just classical music, but what about put dancers while music is happening, and maybe even visual arts, and collaborate with other means of arts. And so the name means, what if you looked at this painting, what is the sounds of that? Or it's kind of interlocking of visual aspects and then sounds. And we try to just capture that a little bit. And then it has evolved into more of I like to call it like a buffet of music.
Right.
So this festival now, it's in 5th year. It's an annual festival that we've been doing in Queens. We've been fortunate enough to receive grants from Queens Council on the Arts for this. So we have been doing it in a secret theater in Long Island City. And so this year's program, it's, I think, the largest it's been, has a Composers Concordance concert, which is a group of composers who writes music. And so it's an orchestra chamber music concert. And that happens in Flushing Town Hall. And we have a chamber orchestra program. We have a jazz program. We have a brand new musical with 20-something casts. And we have a cabaret show, and we have new music show, and then we have a newly composed opera. So
that's a lot.
it is. That happens over 10 days.
Yeah.
And some are repeated. So musical happens 3 times. And so it is a lot. And except for the first one, it happens all at the Secret Theater that I mentioned.
So you're what, 28, 29-ish? Let's go with that.
Yeah, sure.
28, 29-ish. Maybe a little bit older.
Yeah.
And you're constantly working.
Yeah.
And you have a nonprofit that you help run? Like,
yeah.
Wait, when do you sleep is basically my question.
I sleep. So, I mean...
like, how heavily involved are you still with this? I mean...
So, if you asked me the question last year, I would say, yeah, I did everything, and I'm also playing in it, and I'm there the whole time. But this year's a little different. I had a conversation with my partner, co-founder, and asked her, hey, is it all right if I try to step back a little bit and took a little more liberty from this so that I could explore a little bit with my freelancer side. And so this year I'm a little bit less involved, but I still remain as a co-founder and board member and all that titles you want to put in. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, but you're still, but that would mean you're still involved with the planning and putting on all this stuff.
And I intend to be there as much as I can to support, maybe just be there, give a speech, which is pretty taxing, actually. I'm not really good at it, but someone has to introduce the people, and to see the show. And I'm quite proud of this festival because it usually gives over 100 performers a stage to perform in, and a lot of it is newly composed. And it's in Queens because we're based in Astoria, although I moved to Brooklyn a few months ago. But the organization is still based in Astoria. So
now, I just am curious a little bit about, like, people are always people talk about starting things a lot. People have ideas, and many times they're excellent ideas. But when it comes to the actual execution of it, that's a lot of times where it bogs down. You start when you move out of the idea phase, then you have to start dealing with actual people, and actual people are kind of annoying. And whether they're the nicest person in the world, you're going to have conflicts.
Sure.
Excuse me. And so, and this is, this organization, you've been putting on these festivals for 5 years. Getting your nonprofit status, that's not easy, even though you might not have thought, you might not have realized it at the time. How did the process work of just getting that off the ground? You of course you want all of these things. You want all of these multidiscipline, multiple disciplines, and the different cultural ideas, and how did you get there from the idea phase to the actual execution phase?
Yeah, I think it's...
Or what were some of the things that you learned when you were doing that?
Right. I mean, I wish Yui was here too. She can tell you a lot about it because she spends a lot of time, and she's a composer. So it is her way to express her songs or her pieces performed. And that's important for composers, to be heard.
Of course.
And us both going to Juilliard, we definitely took advantage of having access to practice rooms, rehearsal space, or even putting a concert together and asking musicians. Like, we could ask musicians in a cafeteria and say, like, hey, what are you doing? so and so day, you know, we were putting together this concert. Can you do it for like $50? And you know, it's not very much, but then we always try to pay something or just show gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started out small, and we tried to do programs that fit in our capacity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't want to rent Carnegie Hall, and we probably won't for a long time. But so we know our place, but then we try to at least make the quality very good, and we try to find people who would be willing to donate their time or talent for being able to show their talent.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll find a venue. We'll book a venue, say for this festival we've been doing. With grants, maybe we can cover just the space, but maybe not so much the performance fee. But then we'll use our network of people who we've met personally or maybe at the concert, or so we'll find people who we want to work with, but who they want to sort of use us, you know, to promote themselves. So there's this mutual interest, so that we don't feel bad about,
Right.
you know.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of how I operate.
Right.
It's
And
like,
I think this is what a lot of groups do, I
yeah,
think.
I mean, you rub my
Yeah.
back, I'll rub your back, you know.
Mm-hmm. So then we've been lucky to be surrounded by very talented people, and I would say, you know, just even looking at this year's programs, it's just gonna grow and grow, and hopefully, you know, we'll have maybe not even more programs, but then each of them can grow into more separate projects if we can,
Mm-hmm.
or just make each program more dense, or start paying musicians more, or you know,
Yeah.
all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Younger musicians, I think sometimes they don't realize how long things take.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you there are always younger people that you see who are successful
Mhm.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, well, why can't I do that? I'm like, well, it's a pretty small percentage
Yeah.
that are successful immediately.
Right.
And things like this, you know,
Mhm.
you have to commit to them,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to believe in what you're doing.
Right.
And this is, you know, something where
Yeah.
you know, if you guys had just
Right.
come up with this and like we're like, oh, we'll do this, that'd be
Yeah.
cool,
Right.
but didn't put the work in and believe it and the
Yeah.
commit to it over a longer
Right. Mm-hmm.
like a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I was just speaking with Will Lang
Mhm.
last week about, you know, musicians needing to take a longer view
Mm-hmm.
of the things that they're working on and
Mhm.
how they work, whether it's musically, like when
Mhm.
you're practicing, or in the projects that you want
Yeah.
to do. If you don't have like a long-term
Mhm.
view of it, like doing the short term is going to be you're going to stress yourself out, because
Yeah.
it's just you're going to be focusing on here and then
Mhm.
here and then here, as opposed to being like, oh, well, how about like 5 years down the road?
Right.
Let's
Right.
commit towards that, and
Yeah.
having something
Uh-huh.
still going then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because right now it just looks like it's failing,
Right.
but you
yeah.
know, you have to push through a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
Awesome, that sounds really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've-
I mean, our idea is, you know, if we are able to advertise all these different things as one festival,
Mhm.
maybe people who's never even thought about going to see a new opera might just look at it, you know, just even the ads.
Yeah.
They might just come to the musical show because they're a musical theater person. But then, you know, we were able to just kind of put it all out there. So that's our hope.
Or even if they just see the ads this year and don't come,
Mm-hmm.
if next year
Right.
it shows up again and maybe it's
Mhm.
something different that piques their interest.
Yeah.
You know, oh, I remember seeing the ads for this last year,
Right.
and then this year I'm going to go, kind
Yeah,
of a thing. And
right.
it's like that kind of consistency. You got to kind of chip away at people.
Yeah, I think consistency is key, right? 'Cause
Right.
I imagine, you know, for you too, I'm sure some week you might be tired of putting out podcasts, but then, you know, if you don't keep doing it, people might not hear you, or I respect that. You have to
exactly. There's
do
a thing actually called this is this nerdiest term ever, but it's called pod fading. Where podcasts will go and they'll release material for consistently for a specific amount of time, but right around the 20 episode mark, they just fall off and just stop. And you can even you can look, if you go on the iTunes store, you can look at like arts podcasts in particular, even like by big, like WQXR, their Meet the Composer podcasts, very sporadic. Like they can get away with it because they have, they have a built-in listenership. But like other arts, there was a guy who did stuff with Bang on a Can and was doing a lot of podcasts and spoke to some people that I've interacted with, and he did like 20 up until like the summer of 2014. Hasn't released anything since. And you have to, any kind of thing, if you're not consistent, even through the times when like some weeks the listeners aren't there, and I kind of get discouraged about it.
Sure,
but
sure.
Just keep going,
right?
Because next week will be better,
right?
Probably.
And the great thing about it is you can always go back and listen to episode 1. Like,
of course.
I listened to a few of your episodes, and that wasn't. Some of them were from a long time ago, but then it's out there. Like it's your thing.
Yeah, and it's they're not going to go bad.
Right.
There's not a shelf life necessarily.
Yeah, that's great.
Some of the events might have might be over, but anyway.
Yeah.
So MuSE Festival next month.
Yep.
You are performing all over the city and teaching all of the city. So
yes.
people, when's the why am I blanking on the name of the ensemble? Ink.
Wet ink?
Wet ink, yes. Not fresh ink.
Yeah, that's on November 7th and 8th. It's a part of Performa 15. And it should be outside, and I think it's free to public. I'm not sure. It should be.
Are they going to charge people to come to Times Square now?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's pretty close.
Right.
They charge you in your soul.
Yeah.
Times Square.
Right. I avoid Times Square.
I only want to be in Times Square if I'm getting paid to be there.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of them.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
so that should be fun.
If someone misses you at some event, you'll be at another one pretty shortly.
Probably. And I mean, I have to confess, I'm really bad about
telling
announcing like websites updates. It's very tough for me. I do Facebook, but not maybe as effectively.
It's hard. It's a hard thing to balance. If my website didn't automatically update with my new podcast episodes, I would totally forget to do it. Right. Like there's a widget on there that pulls the new ones up there automatically, and I'm like, oh, thank God, don't have to remember that.
Right.
But great, thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh,
really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It was fun. I love I love talking to people about their stuff. So it's
Yeah.
Awesome.
Slow down.
All right, Yui, thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having me.
So you are director of MuSE, which is multicultural
Sonic Evolution. Yes.
Great. And of course, I talked with Chihiro about this, and you guys started this in what year?
We started performing as MuSE in 2007, and we became nonprofit in 2009.
So, and you guys were classmates together at Juilliard?
Yes, I was a year ahead of her, but we were in the same. We were there same time, so we became friends, and we were talking about music. We did concerts together, and we did a couple of concerts together, like something what we are doing, similar to what we are doing right now, to think maybe we should start a group together. So we have been together performing, I'm writing for her some kind of occasion for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, 8 years is a long time to be collaborating with especially in a culture now, like where people want to do as many things with as many different people as possible, sticking with the same configurations. So, and you're a composer.
Yes.
And so you started because you were writing stuff for her and just like being friends and stuff.
Yes, that's how exactly.
All right. Excuse me. So what's kind of and now you're doing a lot. Chihiro mentioned that she's kind of been forced to take a little bit of a step back, still being involved, but
yes,
not as much.
She's involved as a performer more,
but not so much in the day-to-day operations
that's
of
correct.
it. And what is your title?
I'm artistic director.
Here we go.
And I produce the shows. So we invite in, so what we are is not really like a string quartet or orchestra or any kind of like instrumentation like set to like like solid instrumentation. So we actually have musical theater going on when opera is going on. Sometimes we have a straight play with music in the background, dance with music, like modern dance, anything that actually with music. So of course classical music, contemporary music and classical music, anything can be involved just as a music concert, but more but we actually do collaboration with different field artists from different fields, like dance, theater, sometimes media, different things.
And so upcoming in the next
2
week and a half.
Yeah,
Well, the first event is...
First event is an orchestra. Program A, we are calling. Program A is an orchestra, which there is this new group. They became non-profit actually, very recent, but we started thinking of doing this as a part of festival because they were going to put up this magnificent orchestra concert in Flushing Town Hall. And there are about 18 pieces that will be premiered as an orchestra piece. Everything is very short, but there are 18 composers that are premiering their pieces, so it's very exciting.
And this is all part... Sorry, I didn't mention the name. So this is all part of...
Sounds of Arts Festival.
Sound of Arts Festival.
Yes.
This is the
Fifth
fifth
yes.
year of this festival.
Yes.
That's been put on by MuSE.
Yes. So the Sounds of Arts Festival happens always in November, before Thanksgiving.
Right.
So that's the week-long festival. We put up different programs.
And it all takes place in Queens.
Yes.
And there's... I was looking at the schedule before I even talked to Chihiro. I was looking at the festival and all the different events happening, and of course I was like, opportunity! I could time this just right. But there's all sorts of different things. There's the orchestra. There's
Yes.
dance. There's a brand new musical
Yes.
Being put on. Which this is the first time you've done that.
No, we actually
like a
produced
full one or just a bigger one.
We have produced actually a couple of musicals already, but this year we have like 20 cast members, which is like more than what we used to do. So it's scheduling, of course, it's a lot of things there, but it's so much fun. And we have opera, which is amazing that this composer who plays koto, the Japanese traditional instrument, he also writes, and he has made this opera, which is amazing that the concept is that he can travel with the opera. So everything is portable, and it's called Beloved Prey. So it's about an animal, like animal. It's so like singers are this singing as animals, and it's amazing how you can actually bring opera to somewhere. Know? And that's the closing program of the festival.
And what's the name of the composer?
Kento Iwasaki.
Kento Iwasaki. It's very difficult for my dumb American mouth to go work around some of these things.
You're doing great.
So, that's all really exciting.
So, other than that, we have another chamber orchestra coming in, which was started last year, based in Queens. So we are very grateful that we get grant from Queens Council on the Arts, which is the money coming from the New York Department of Cultural Affairs, DCA. So we do the event in Queens, and because we're based in Queens and we're getting the grants from Queens Council on the Arts, and so we would like to feature Queens artists as
Right.
much as possible to just come to Queens.
Yeah, yeah.
Because a lot of things is happening actually in Queens, but not that many people know about it, and also not that many people want to come to Queens for some reason. So we
But I
want
don't
to
want
help.
to take. I don't want to take the N train out there. That's just a pain.
It's just right there.
Yeah, no, it is.
But yes, but so we want to make sure like Queens artists is featured, and Queens has actually have something
Yeah.
artistically.
And then you live out there as well.
Yes.
So it's
Yes, organization is based there, and I live there too. Yes.
nice little community.
Yes. So
Uh,
Lucidi Chamberistas, which was formed last year, conducted by Eugene Takahashi. He's a violinist too. And he started this chamber orchestra. So he's bringing his chamber orchestra to the festival. So besides the one happening in Flushing Town Hall, everything happens in Long Island City. It's in Secret Theater. It's for me, it's very secretive still because sometimes you can't even find it if you don't know where it is. But it's a very, very cute theater. I love the theater, and the space is actually very cozy and it's very inviting, as long as you can find it.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're happy to have the chamber orchestra there, and we have musical theater called the Clackamas Pioneers, written by Chris Whitney and Mark D. Evans, who were classmates, my classmates at NYU actually, in musical theater writing program, and they wrote this fantastic musical which is about a family from Bhutan moving to America, and then
The challenges and
challenges and finding out how to live here,
Right.
without being so lonely. So it's very cute, but it's very funny. It's a comedy musical, so I highly recommend to check it out because it's a new one and nobody has done it before.
Yeah.
It's just written for this festival.
Yeah.
And we have new music program, which is by Ictus Percussion and Cadillac Moon Ensemble. They are bringing a program of new music, classical contemporary music, with joined by students in New York. So different colleges like Queens College, Purchase, different college students are joining the program to have this magnificent new music evening. I mean, it's a matinee actually. It's a Saturday matinee.
Right.
And we have the opera that I mentioned. We have a cabaret night, which is musical theater songs, standalone songs that written by living composers, which are going to be performed by 6 female singers. So it's a lot of them.
And most of these, or at least the opera and the musical, are going to be performed more than once, right?
Yes.
So if you miss one of them, it's okay.
Actually, the musical is going to be a 3-night show. Other than that, we only have 1 night each, or 1 performance each.
Okay, I lied about the opera, just
yes.
the musical.
And we would like to do more, but yeah, this year just.
I mean, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yes.
So what are the dates of the festival? Are
Yes, so starting on the 14th in Flushing Town Hall, that's the opening night. We'll come out to Flushing Town Hall because it's a very, very nice place and a very nice program. After that, it will be from Tuesday, which is the Chamber Orchestra, which is happening in Queens, in Long Island City.
At the Secret Theater.
And then we don't have anything on Wednesday. I forgot to mention the Thursday night, it's a jazz night. And we are featuring 2 composers, Mark Wade, the bassist, who also writes music, fabulous music, original compositions, and also Chris Bistelfeld, who is a guitarist. We have his quartet coming. So we have jazz night on Thursday. and then Fridays, Sunday, and Monday nights are the musical, and then Saturday is the cabaret night. Sunday matinee is the new music, and then Tuesday, the last performance of the festival clothing concert, is the opera night.
And this will be November 12th through November
14th through 24th.
Okay,
Yes.
so November 14th, November 24th.
Yes.
Everything in Queens. First event, Flushing Town Hall.
Everything else,
Secret Theater, Long Island City.
Yes.
And what are the kind of the ticket price ranges?
Yes. So the ticket prices are, for the general admission, we have $15 advance tickets. On the day, it's a $20 ticket. For the students and seniors, it's $12 advance and $14 on the day of. And so everything that's advanced sales is online sales. So if you can check out our website, you can actually have the ticket link there. So the website address is musefriends.org. Yeah.
musefriends.org.
Yes.
Awesome. I mean, well, this is great. Hopefully I'll be able to make it out to at least one of the things. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking a little bit of time to talk to me.